Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to the Black Country Business Festival event with Creative Black Country, and we're talking about UIreland's funding journey. So I'm Yvonne and I'm the fundraising manager for Creative Black Country. And Creative Black Country work with community in Sandwell, Walsall and Wolverhampton, and we explore and develop creative projects with local people in the places where they live. And our mission is making the most of the Black Country through arts, creativity and culture. The U Ireland project demonstrates a collaborative journey which involves support and input from many people to a successful outcome of their project grants funds from the Arts Council. And this involved the community groups working with artists to create some fantastic bird boxes, which formed a touring exhibition. And you'll hear all about that in a moment. So our speakers today are Irina from U Ireland, Richard from Creative Black Country, Libby from SCVO, and Jill from Arts Council. And we're just going to talk, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves in a moment. But this is just to say that if you have an idea, a creative idea, there are people at CBC, at your Council of Voluntary Service and Arts Council to give support and advice. So I'm going to just hand over, first of all, if I may, to introduce herself to you, is Irina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Irina, and I'm one of the directors of the U Ireland CIC as a community interest company. Our organization has been established to support families with Eastern and Central European background to adapt and integrate themselves into living in the UK and to promote social cohesion and general well-being. We believe that integration isn't happening just through learning the language, but through understanding the values, culture, and taking part in community activities. All our projects seek to bring socially isolated and lonely members of our diverse community together to participate in activities that we are offering. Our organization is offering various services, such as Weekend Kids Club, where children can learn their native language, discover art and culture. Pre-pandemic, we also hosted regular community gatherings, festivals and celebrations, and hoping to return to these events very soon. In 2018, we received the funding from Creative Black Country to run a creative project within our Kids Club. Following successful completion, we received an extension for another year and were supported by creative advisor Richard and Libby from SCVO. Through various discussions and support from CVC, we came up with an idea of You Are Here project. The project idea was developed and we decided on the funding options. Large part of the project was covered by the Arts Council funding, while SCVO and CBC helped us to cover remaining important parts of the project.
Thank you, Irina. And now if I can ask Rich to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everybody. I recognise some of the people that have attended today. I can't really beat Irina's introduction, but my name's Richard, my second name's Franks, and I'm the creative advisor for Walsall and Sandwell. My role predominantly is to support creatives and community organisations to deliver or experience creativity in the two boroughs. And that could be anything from matching artists with creative organisations in the area to supporting funding bids, as is the case with this project. The You Are Here project, on the You Are Here project, I was the project, I suppose, project creative producer, I would say, and mentor for the project. So I help the group sort of go through the stages of a creative project from start to finish, and some of the things that we have to think about when putting a creative project on of this size. And alongside you, Ireland, and myself, I'd also like to really big up the arts organisation Juno Projects, which is Ben Sadler and Phil Duckworth, because they're fantastic arts duos that really helped make the project a success, and they were fantastic to work with. And that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Rich. Libby, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Libby Mahoney, and I'm the Small Groups Development Officer at SCVO, which is a support charity based in Sandwell, and we help other community organisations to develop as their own sense of identity and plans that they want to take forward to benefit their community. And I help them with things like how to access funding, how to set themselves up properly, what they'll need to put into place. I help them with their project planning and sort of the critical things that they might not have thought of necessarily. And I was involved with the You Are Here project as I supported U Ireland with their Arts Council application and helping them to think about how they were going to deliver this moving forward, especially during the pandemic, and what they needed to put into place to make it viable.
Brilliant, thank you, Libby. And I probably should say at this point that SCVO and the other councils of voluntary service are very, very integral and partner organisations with Creative Black Country. So it's a very important part of our work. So thank you. And then Jill, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Yvonne, and good morning, everybody. And please, can you bear with me today, because I've got a little bit of a croaky voice in case I don't normally sound this croaky. My name's Jill Brown. I am a relationship manager at Arts Council England, and in all normal times I'm based in Nottingham and Birmingham, but I cover the whole of the Midlands. So Arts Council England is the national development agency for the arts and culture, and as a relationship manager I'm responsible for monitoring how Arts Council money is spent. So I work with organisations and individuals who regularly receive funding from Arts Council. So as a relationship manager, we act as critical friends, and we provide advice and support to individuals and organisations. We also monitor other projects that we fund, such as the National Portfolio Organisations, which is our largest investment. And each relationship manager has a portfolio of organisations that they work with. I also work with Creative People and Places projects, of which one of Creative Black Country is one, and also monitor other funding strands that Arts Council has. And as in my role, I also assess grant applications, and I talk to people about making funding applications. And that's me, thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Jill. Yes, and again, another very important part of Creative Black Country is our relationship with the Arts Council. So thank you very much for being here this morning. So what I've done is I've asked our speakers to give us a challenge in developing the project, the You Are Here exhibition, and a triumph or a breakthrough, so that we can kind of learn a little bit about the journey. So again, I'm going to start with Irina, if I may, if you can tell us about your challenge and triumph.
Yeah, the main challenge that we faced is that the application for the Arts Council was quite lengthy and at times difficult to understand what really was expected from us. And I think it wasn't very easy for the first time applicants, especially for those communities with English being their second or even third language. We were very lucky that we had support from Libby and Rich and with this application, and we were successful on our second submission. However, there are positives from this. Application and project budget was very detailed, and it was very helpful throughout actual delivery of the project. So project delivery went very smoothly without any issues. The main triumphs of this project is that we managed to bring diverse communities together to share their culture and heritage through art. Community groups that took part in the project started working with each other and also now developing their own art projects. Also, our exhibition drew lots of attention, and we have been invited to tour the United Kingdom with our art pieces. And I think it's a great success, and we're already planning our next art project.
Thank you, Irina. And you can see some of the bird boxes that were created on the screen. So do you want to tell us just a tiny little bit about what, the idea that came behind this, why the bird boxes?
Yes, the idea we came up with the bird boxes is because birds do migrate the same as people. So we use that as a metaphor to show that people do migrate to different countries for better life, like birds do. Birds, because we are humans, we had a bit more to show than just a box with a hole in it. So we decided to add some culture, traditions, to tell a story, history, heritage. So each box represented various communities and actually tells the story.
Yes, and we went to see this, and it was absolutely fascinating hearing those stories. So thank you, Irina. That's really helpful. Thank you. Okay, so next, could I just, Rich, would you like to tell us your the challenge and triumph for this project?
Yes. So I'll start with the triumph. Well, in my opinion, so I think that one of the biggest triumphs for this project is the fact that the groups took such ownership. When I say groups, I mean you are here, but also DOR, which was a Romanian group, the SACTA, which is a Latvian group, and the CZ to SK group, which was the Czech to Slovak joint group, took such a great ownership of the project that actually it was lovely to see so much commitment. And I think that leads me on to the fact that the groups and the artists went above and beyond the expectation of myself, and I'm sure you are here, in terms of their commitment to making the best possible artwork that they could. So what you don't see here, because we're at the end of the project but we've still doing the reporting, is we've got amazing films that people have actually made, like travel logs of like the tour of like Romania, for example. We've got people doing song and dance that you can actually activate through the birdhouses themselves through a QR code technology, and those films are going to be readily available in a learning document that we're going to put together. So just to let you know that this project is sort of a lot more than just the birdhouses themselves. The birdhouses are almost a vehicle to share other parts of culture from each group. It's been amazing and very, very informative. I've learned quite a lot on this project, and anybody that takes a little time to look at the artwork will learn a lot about different cultures, which I think is definitely a triumph of a project like this. And it's also backed up with the evaluation material that we've collected throughout the project, and such lovely comments from people across the Black Country, and now by the looks of it, Birmingham and the rest of the country. I think that brings me on to the fact that, like, when I say people took ownership, one of the brilliant things is that now it is going independently of ourselves, ACE, SCVO. It's now touring the country through UIreland themselves and DOR and a couple of the other groups as well. So watch this space. It's already appeared in Moseley and Birmingham, and also in Walsall at the cycling event that happened recently. And just from a sort of very number crunching sort of binary sort of things, we did have over 400, I think it's probably more like 500 visitors now to the project over the last 6 weeks, and we've also had way over 1,000 people that we said that we would have as an audience online. So it's been great in all aspects. I suppose one of the things that always, and this is the challenge, is actually the biggest challenge, and it's a double-edged sword, is managing the expectations of a project like this, because everybody had such high hopes for the project. And I have to say, and I should have mentioned this earlier, Juno have been amazing at matching those aspirations that the groups had. And I've never seen a level of commitment by an arts organisation as committed, artists as committed as this, I should say, to a project. In the background, there's been WhatsApp chats and sharing of information, sharing of artwork for 3 months, whereas in a normal project you might have 4 or 5 workshops and then a ta-da moment at the end where the artwork's unveiled. But with this project, conversations are gone for 4 months or so. And to wrap things up, with the challenges, essentially that is a double-edged sword. It was knowing when to stop. I mean, our capacity as a small group of people was very small, as you can imagine. So in reality, we went above and beyond in terms of the time we spent on the project. And it was very difficult to know when to sort of say, we've done enough, this is okay, this is good enough. So I think that was our biggest challenge. And I suppose the other challenge is working during a pandemic where things change. So we were in complete lockdown when this project started, nothing was open. Then we were in that sort of hinterland where we weren't quite sure what we could and couldn't do. And now we're at a stage where we've gone past that and everything opened, but each venue had its own different COVID rules at this moment in time. So we sort of had to navigate the risk assessments and all those things that aren't necessarily interesting, but are incredibly important to be a successful project. And I think that's me finished.
Thanks, Rich. And yes, really interesting there to hear you talk about being real, trying to be realistic about what can be achieved, but also not knowing before you put an application in, you don't really know, do you, how far it's going to go. So that's a difficult balance. So thank you for those comments. Libby, would you like to give your perspective?
Yes, so as I'm sure most people appreciate, it's really challenging to come together in a format like this to review and discuss a very complicated application form, and having to scroll up and down a screen to go over the questions and really drill down what we want to do and put that in. So there was a lot of conversations around that, and I think a little bit of frustration at times that we couldn't just sit down together to do it properly in person. But we managed, needless to say, to work past that, and we got a really good application together despite some of the challenges that were thrust on us, and this, I think, helped test the water for some of the workshops that were there, because again, in the first part of the project, they had to be done through Zoom and that way, which brings me on to the challenge, sorry, the triumph really, and that is seeing the end results and the exhibition, and the watching participants come in to view it and their expressions, they're sort of amazed and in awe of these pieces. And it's also interesting to learn about the different cultures, because you realize that we're all different, but we're all very the same in some aspects. Some of our culture is represented differently through different stories or folklore. But there's common threads that tie us all together, and I think that's an important part of the project to hear about and review and look at. And like's already been mentioned, I think the breakthrough for the project is the fact that it's now going to go on a national tour, so more people are going to have the opportunity to experience and immerse themselves in these really lovely bespoke sculptural birdhouses, and to experience and learn more about those. And then they can link that back to the QR codes for each of the pieces that give you that extra information, or go to U Ireland's website again to learn more. And it's that thirst for knowledge, and part of the journey is sharing that knowledge. And that's me, Yvonne.
Thank you, Libby. Yes, and good to good to kind of see how many people kind of get involved, and what your each different skill and each different person can give. So your advice from SCVO and Richard's advice from CBC. And Irina, if I can just go back to you, because you mentioned something when we were kind of talking about this, about the challenges of going through the application process and not giving up. Could you just say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. As a first-time applicant, communities may kind of look at the application and say, "Oh no, that's too much." But actually, if they look through each question, it will take some time. Is the fact. It will take time to put it together, but in the end, it will help them. It will help them to shape the project and to deliver smoothly. Like, we delivered project without any major issues, thanks to that application being so detailed, because we had answer to every question that popped up along the way, which I think is helpful. Yes, it may put some people away from the application size, and sometimes questions are not very understandable. So it's like English is not my first language. It's not even my second language. It's my third language. So sometimes I look at the question and I'm thinking, no, I can't do this. And Libby knows I would actually write email to Libby and say, I don't understand, can you help? Because yeah, there may be some difficulties, but most important part here that communities shouldn't be discouraged. They should ask for help. There is organizations there is SCVO, there is Creative Black Country, there's Art Council itself, where they can actually send an email to and get an answer. Because when I couldn't find on Grant Team some information, I've emailed the Arts Council, and they answered very quickly and sent me very detailed directions, step by step, how to find what I was looking for. So support is there, so people shouldn't be discouraged to apply. It's very great opportunity to get this funding and to create something amazing.
Thank you, Irene. So I'm really glad that message came through, because I know that can be, a real stumbling block for everyone. You can look at it and think, oh, it's too daunting, I don't know where to start. But actually, to know you've got support along the way, and that it might not necessarily be a straight road. It might go up and down a little bit, but actually, when you look back at the journey and how it was worth it and what you've achieved now, then that's really fantastic. So that neatly kind of brings us into to Jill and the Arts Council, and Jill's going to give us some tips for applying for project grants and generally to the Arts Council. So I'm just going to share my screen again and get Jill's slide up, and then so over to you, Jill.
Thanks, Yvonne. As well as some top tips, I'm just going to talk you through a little bit about why we ask for such detailed information, and also just to mention too that project grants is changing slightly. So project grants is changing to align with Arts Council's new 10-year strategy, which is called Let's Create. The new programme is going to open in November, and it will have new guidance and a new application form. It won't be closing by it in the changeover period, so it will continue to be open. Everything that is currently eligible for project grants will continue to be eligible. We're just changing the way that we ask for information. So if you were already working on an application, that information can easily be lifted and put into a new application form if you decide to apply in November. So new guidance for this is going to be published later this month in October. And the main key change to point out here is that we're raising the threshold for smaller grants. So currently, smaller grants, you can apply for up to £15,000. We're raising that to, you can apply to up to £30,000, and you'll still receive a decision within 6 weeks. So just a little bit on why we ask for such detailed information. Some of the information that we ask for is used to report to the government and the National Lottery about how their funding is being spent. We also use it to monitor the backgrounds of who receives grants, and this gives us information about where we might need to focus advice giving. For example, we know that some areas don't apply, some communities don't apply, and because we're responsible for public money, we need to make sure that it benefits as many people as possible. And administering public money is quite a big responsibility. So we need to manage that investment carefully, which is why we need to make sure funding is going to be spent appropriately. So in part, that is why we ask such detailed questions, because we need to be sure that the government money or the lottery money is being spent appropriately, and it's being spent and used responsibly. But as part of this new fund, we've tried to streamline the information that we ask for. It will still be a significant amount that we ask for, but we've tried to be more mindful of what we ask for and be more transparent about how we use that information. So some things to look out for. As Irene has already said, it's not a quick process. A good application takes time, so you need to take time to plan your activity. Read the applicant guidance very carefully. And again, as Irina said, that process should help you to think about how you plan your project and then how it's carried out once you're successful with the money. Don't assume anything. So the panel or the person looking at your application when it comes in may not know your work at all. So you have to assume that we know nothing about you and your project. You need to tell us about that in your application. And sometimes when you're very close to a project, it means that you might miss something and not explain it properly within an application, because there is that assumption that we will know what you're talking about. So be really clear and explain everything that you can within the application. Don't type straight into Grantium. So Grantium is our system that we use to administer grants, and all applications are made using Grantium. It's a complicated beast sometimes. It can time you out, and if you haven't saved your work, it can be lost. So Grantium times out after 15 minutes of inactivity. So make sure that you do save your work often. We provide an information sheet on our website called Questions and Character Counts. So this provides a breakdown of all the questions we will ask you as part of your application. So you can look at that before you start to enter information onto Grantium. And it can be useful to look at this to help plan your application and anticipate what you're going to need to tell us about. And as part of this, we provide a guide for each section on word and character counts. So word counts can be a little bit challenging on Grantium. So for example, you might have drafted a section on a Word document, for instance, completed your word count, and then you go to cut and paste it into Grantium, only to find that it doesn't fit. And I can tell you that's very frustrating, and because it happens on this side of things too when we're writing our assessments. So for some reason, Word and Grantium don't really speak to each other. But the information sheet questions and character counts may be able to help you here, as it gives an approximate indication of how many words there are in character count within each section. So that should help you. Final bit of advice is get someone not familiar with your project to read your application before you submit it. So this will help to make sense of what you've written and whether someone who's new to your project can understand what it is that you're asking for funding for. And it could also just give an extra pair of eyes to help spell check it and look over the grammar. Use the resources on our website. We've got lots of information sheets which give you detailed information about all aspects of projects, so budgeting, marketing, and things that you might need to know about. The website also has quick videos that you can watch. So introductions to Grantium and introductions to making an application. And of course, there is the guidance itself. We also have a lot of examples of case studies and different ways that our funding is used. And there is also, you can also contact Arts Council when you're putting together your application to ask for any technical information about using Grantium. And as it's already been said, people will come back to you quickly to help you write your application. So a few things to look out for when using Grantium. The main contact will receive all essential funding updates. So not everyone linked to your project is going to be sent this information. So when you go to set up yourself on Grantium, you set up what is called an applicant profile. So you first create, when you first log on to Grantium, you create a user account and then your applicant profile. And the user account can be linked to multiple applicant profiles. So you can have lots of different people linked to your project. If you're registering as an organisation, you should list a main contact for your organisation. And that main contact is the person with ultimate responsibility for managing any project grants, any funding you're awarded. The main contact will personally receive any essential funding agreement updates directly from Arts Council. So that could be things like a change in terms and conditions, changes to requirements, or any amendments to the funding agreement. And there might be sensitive information in there. So for that reason, that is why it's only the main contact that receives those communications. So if there are several people working on your application, only the main contact will receive any communication. The second thing is, register your profile in the same name that your bank account is registered in. So this is where things can slip up slightly if you've been awarded funding. Organisations and individual applicants should register their profile in a name which matches the name on their bank account. So if there's a discrepancy, this could flag an issue once you've been successful with your project. Make any changes to your contact details in your applicant profile. So your applicant profile needs to be approved by Arts Council. We validate it just to check that you are who you say you are and there aren't any duplicates on the system. So before you can start your application form, you have to have that applicant profile approved. And that can take up to 5 working days, 10 when we're in our busier periods. And once you're into that, any changes that you want to make to your information within your application form, you have to do it within your applicant profile. So you can't edit it within an application form. So you might want to, for example, you might be halfway through making an application and you move house, so you need to change your contact details, or you change your mobile number, or you change your email address. So it's important to then update Grantium using your applicant profile. Next bit of advice is enter the right name for your project at the beginning, as you can't change it later. So when you start your eligibility questionnaire, when you start using Grantium, you'll be asked to enter a name for your project. Once you've entered that name, it's not possible to amend it's not possible to amend it once it's been set. It is worth mentioning, though, that we don't use the project name to appraise the application. So we only use it as a way of referencing the project. The eligibility questionnaire, which you complete when you go on to Grantium to start your project, is in place to generate the main application form, and we don't use it in decision making. You aren't able to amend the information after submitting, but it is okay for the amount requested in the application form to differ. So you can change the amount you are requesting in your application form on the basic details tab. And I'm aware some of this, if you haven't used Grantium before, might not make any sense yet. But when you come to use Grantium, you should have this information to hand to be able to help you. And once you've submitted your eligibility questionnaire, you'll be able to access your application form straight away. So you don't have to wait for it to be approved or confirmed. So you're using Grantium and you've entered some information, and you might have more than one project on the go in there. The final piece of advice is, if you can't find your project on Grantium, try clearing the filters. So this happens fairly regularly to people. They can't find information once they've entered it, and they go back to it, they can't find what they've written. There's a little function in Grantium that enables you to clear any filters. So before you start, that's what I would advise you to do, clear filters in Grantium. So that's my top tips at this point. I was just going to flag that we're also running some online one-to-one sessions on Friday the 22nd and Friday the 29th of October, if you want to come along and have a chat about your project. So this is an opportunity to talk to a relationship manager. It might be me, or it might be one of my colleagues. And you can ask any questions you might have about the process or clarify anything. And I think there's going to be some information later on in the slides about how you book these. And we also ask that people give us a little bit of information beforehand so that we can match you to the right relationship manager to speak to, because we all have different areas of specialism. And also to enable us to think a little bit beforehand about any advice that we might want to support you with. And these sessions can last up to 30 minutes and are taking place between 10 AM and 2:30. So I'm going to hand back to Yvonne now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jill. And yeah, very useful tip. So you can, if you haven't even kind of gone on to Grantium yet, and you're thinking about a project, you can see already that there are stages that you need to go through, because Jill's mentioned the eligibility check, and you need to set up your applicant profile. And you know, these things can be a bit daunting, but you know, it is the process, actually, like Irina says, will help you formulate your project. So what might seem really complicated will help you. It's doing the work beforehand, so that when you get to your project, actually, hopefully, things should run really smoothly. So thank you. That's really, really helpful. And I'm just going to check in with Fiona now, because we have some time. If anybody would like to ask a question of any of our speakers, I mean, how to contact Rich, for example, if you've got a creative idea, or how to, if you're looking at some organisational development questions for Libby, or you know, Irina and how her project goes. So so any questions?
We haven't got any questions from the audience yet, but actually, can I sort of bring something up? Is that okay?
You may.
It's actually really, it was just listening to Irina's lovely story and hearing her say how it went so smoothly because of the project plan. I just wanted to sort of confirm with Jill, sometimes things don't go to plan, do they? Even with the best laid plans and the most thought gone into it. And you are very open, aren't you, to developing and changing things with organisations that deliver, because I wouldn't want people to think that if it, you know, what happens if it all goes wrong kind of thing, there's going to be trouble, so to speak.
Yeah, that's right. We completely understand that everything doesn't always run to plan. And also when you make your application, it might be several kind of, you know, months before your project is actually underway and it's being developed. And in that time, things can change hugely. We just ask that people tell us if there's any major changes to their activity. And we can usually accommodate those. We just need to kind of hear from people about those. And also it's okay as well if things don't go to plan, things go wrong. So if you're successful with funding, there's halfway through the project, we ask you to sort of give us a bit of an update as to how things are going. So you can tell us then if it's not quite going to plan. And then there's another opportunity at the very end of the funding project too, where you can talk to us and tell us where things didn't go right, didn't go to plan. So it's absolutely fine, but we just say, please keep talking to us to tell us if things aren't going quite to plan.
Thank you. We do have a question from Julie Edwards here, who says, is it possible to have an idea of the funding the U Island CIC team received?
Yeah, before, just sorry, Faye, just before, I just want to kind of flag up that I think Gavin's going to put in the chat a feedback survey for today's session, just so that we can help make these sessions relevant in future and also to report back to our funders at the Arts Council. If Gavin, if you could put that link into the chat, just while people can copy that, and so they've got that link, and I will send it out as well with the slides. But let's while that's being done, let's have a look at those questions. So sorry, Fiona, can you just repeat the one?
I can, no trouble. Sorry, it's from Julie Edwards, and she asks, can you give us an idea of the funding the U Island CIC team received?
In terms of like how much and what it paid? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, who's better? Irina, could you answer that? Or
yeah, I can answer that. We received 15,000 from the Arts Council England, and we also had supporting funding from SCVO and CBC, which was 7,500 together combined. So yeah, majority of this money, of course, went for the for creation of the actual art pieces. And yeah, lots of bits and pieces, and trying to navigate through pandemic and changing things. Yeah, but that was the amount. Well, what else was there to?
No, I think that's it. I think that's, you've answered it, and so that for the current project grants. So you applied for the level below 15 or up to £15,000.
Up to 15, and we received full amount. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's great. And so I think that the change that's going to happen, that's still relevant now up until the end of November, Jill?
It's the new fund opens in November, so it's likely to be. We don't have an exact date for when it opens yet, but the new guidance is coming this month, but it's likely to be mid-November.
Okay.
And then the threshold goes up to 30,000. So.
Okay. And that's for what's classed as a small grant, if you like, and then there's bigger grants that are over that. So what's the maximum that you can apply for under the project grants, or is there guidance around that?
Well, there isn't a maximum, which is could be quite
marvelous.
freeing for people. Not that we encourage, lots and lots of £100,000 applications at all, but there isn't a cap. So the idea is people apply for what they need, and what you know, what their project demands that they apply for. But yeah, we still don't expect to see lots and lots of massive applications.
No, and I think we're just putting in the chat, but also just to say that if you do want to book one of the one-to-one sessions, which if you have an idea and it's something that you want to pursue, that would be really, really good opportunity to speak to Jill and one of the colleagues at Arts Council, just to have that one-to-one session. If you email info@creativeblackcountry.co.uk, then Fiona will pick that up and arrange a time for you within those dates that we have set. So that's fine. It is a really, really good opportunity. I don't know whether we have any more questions, but I just wanted to put up this last slide about the date, so you can kind of jot down. The dates are going to be Friday the 22nd of October, Friday the 29th of October, and between 10 and 1. I think you mentioned it went on a bit longer, but that's probably the last time that you can start the sessions at 1 o'clock. And also next week at the same time, next Thursday at 10:30, myself and Matt Andrews from Black Country Touring are actually doing a session. It's called How to Fund Your Creative Project, but we're going to go through some practical tips and advice about using Grantium. So the whole session will be about that. So if you do want some more information, then please, there's a link on the screen, but we'll send it out with the slides. That's next Thursday at 10:30. And again, it'll be quite an informal session, and so you can ask, you know, questions, and also Matt and I will also be available to do some little surgeries, if you like, some one-to-one sessions after that. So there's quite a lot of help and advice at the moment around if you wanted to you're thinking of doing some going through an application process, which is really, really helpful, because there is help out there. Just wanted to say that, and that you know, yeah, don't, you know, go for it. Don't be discouraged, like Irina said. So we're coming to the end of the session this morning. If anybody has any other questions that they want to ask while everybody's here, then please do. If not, we'll probably sign off. If you can please complete the survey link, because it really does help us. We'd really appreciate that. And I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all our speakers, to Irina, Libby, Rich and Jill, to Fiona and Gavin on the tech, and to Rachel and Lucy, our interpreters. I hope that was useful for you, and everybody have a great day. Thank you.